I want you to imagine a coin. Any coin. I want you to imagine that you do a coin flip, trying to get tails. What are the odds of getting the result you want? Most people would say 50%, right? Now, I want you to imagine that you add another coin, and you still want to get tails on both coin flips. What are the odds of getting that result now? If you are into math, you might know that the answer is a 25% chance, which doesn't sound too bad. But then, what if you change those coins for 6-sided dice, and you're rolling these dice in order to get a 6 on both rolls? Suddenly, the odds don't look so good, right? This is known in math as a multivariate probability, a system where the result of a randomly generated number is not determined by one parameter, but instead by many. And if you think this is unrelated to Monster Hunter, I'm afraid you might have grown complacent. As much as there's always turmoil with each Monster Hunter release, there are topics that at the end of the day can be tempered by the overall enjoyment of a new title on the series. Difficulty, focus mode, wounds, secret, you name it, these things have been criticized and will probably continue to be discussed in the community for different reasons. However, every time that I look for a discussion around Artian Weapons, I see people mentioning how ugly they are, or how over-centralizing they become in the endgame, making it so that players don't want to use any other weapons, and then some people complain about the Artian rolls, and that is where they start to get close to the real problem, but then can't seem to find a way to elaborate. Artian weapons are not bad by design. 3 deco slots and the ability to craft different degrees of attack or critical chance is not something that I would deem worrying or disappointing. But when it comes to Artian reinforcements, I honestly don't know how people aren't being louder about this. Multivariate probability systems have become quite common in today's gaming ecosystem. If you look for any gacha game, you're bound to find progression systems tied to many layers of RNG, where you have a chance to have a chance to have a chance to unlock a character or reach a certain milestone. The problem with these systems is that players will often dismiss the different layers of probability to make progress as simple RNG, when in actuality, the odds are being purposely stacked heavily against their favor. In other words, players think that they are doing a coin flip, but the systems are rolling many different dice in order to give you a chance of playing a slot machine which has a chance of allowing you to flip more coins. The reason why this sounds confusing is because it is. It is by design. If you cannot quite grasp the mechanisms behind these systems, you can't quite visualize that they might be rigged or simply unreasonable. And that will make the average person avoid thinking too much about it and simply say,
"Let's go gambling!" Aw, dang it.
I bring this up because Artian weapons follow the same principle. You might think it is not really that bad because Artian materials are easily farmed and most people either have their 4 out of 5 perfect rolls Artian weapon or simply don't bother with them and play with something else. The thing is that RNG has always been present in Monster Hunter. I've seen people lose their minds over a single gem of a monster while others hunt them for the fun of it, get the gem and not even realize it because they don't even use gear that needs it. However, you're always giving a rather fair shot at getting these drops, mostly because the RNG systems are not multivariate. If the gem has a 1% drop chance, you have a pretty fair chance of getting that gem after hunting that monster 100 times. I say fair because some people are cursed. The point is that the way that Artian weapons work right now is a really bad omen. Let's look at the different layers of probability that have to be in your favor to get a good Artian weapon. Imagine that you're trying to get a full crit paralysis insect glaive. Glaive uses 3 components: blade, tube, and device. When you hunt a high level monster, you will get these artifacts that, once identified, you can use for your weapon. So off you go, you hunt a monster and by the end of it, you get 2 blades and 2 tubes. We're missing a device. Fair enough, the game is about grinding anyway, so let's go farm some more artifacts. After a couple more hunts, you finally get the part that you were missing. Great! Does that mean you can craft your weapon now? No! You see, the combination of parts that you need are not only weapon specific, they also have to be of the same element in order to craft a weapon with that element. In this case, you need all the parts for the insect glaive to have the paralysis element. You grind some more and now you have all the parts with the right element. Can you get your glaive now? No. Turns out that not only they have to be of the same element, But you also have parts with attack modifiers and parts with crit modifiers. And if you want to craft your full crit paralysis glaive, you need 3 paralysis parts with the crit modifier. With this, we already have 3 layers of RNG. We need the right parts with the right element and the right modifier. This is not even the worst part. Artian Reinforcements. What you have here is a system that was made to be the endgame of Monster Hunter Wilds. The idea behind reinforcements is that you could push the limits of the already solid stats of Artian Weapons to be even better. Many players might not even interact with this system or feel dissatisfied when engaging with it. You have 5 reinforcement levels. Each can give you one of 4 different effects: attack, crit, element, and sharpness. Following the logic of my example at the beginning of the video, this would be like having 5 4-sided dice, attack represented by 1, crit by 2, element by 3, and sharpness by a 4. At first, this might look like this is just something that you can do if you want to have a bonus to your weapon. But the truth is that a perfect rolls Artian weapon is noticeably stronger than a weapon with a random mix. Because of the state of the current meta, raw attack, or in other words, the physical portion of your damage, is highly prioritized. What most people are doing is either going for 1 sharpness roll and 4 attack rolls, or 2 sharpness rolls and 3 attack rolls. It depends on the weapon. Even elemental weapons are prioritizing attack rolls over elemental in many cases because of how strong raw damage is. So if we're going for the best rolls, this would be like getting 4 dice with a 1 and one of them with a 4. And if we look at the Google Dice Roller, we can see how this happening might be quite unlikely. I don't like these types of systems. Even if you're not into min-maxing, they still end up being this carrot that is being waven in front of the player, reminding them, you could be stronger, better. Obviously, this heavily plays into the psychology of pattern-seeking brains. The reason why achievements are so popular is because our brains really like to pursue dopamine-inducing activities like, for example, filling up a list until it is complete. Just look at how many people were, and still are, crown hunting to the point that they would join a hunt in multiplayer and then leave if they found out that the monster was not a crown. Trust me on this. Game developers and marketing departments in many other industries know this. They have studied this for years. In fact, the closest thing that I have to a diss track in my channel is a video about Lost Ark. Like, I genuinely crash out in that video. I used to play that game a lot, but I ended up hating it because of systems like these. Systems that slowly but surely destroyed its player base. It is a particularly worrying fact that Capcom decided to implement these systems considering how lackluster the endgame was and how much dissatisfaction it has created among the player base. It is so weird also because they decided to go with a much worse system than the regular monster drops, but they decided to make field service really good to farm low drop chance monster parts? Like, what was the logic here? Why water down a system that has always worked well to make room for something that is going to just frustrate players a lot more? And some people might say that it is not that bad, because the Artian rolls RNG is predetermined, which means that you can do a couple of rolls, quit the game without saving, roll them again, and have the same results. People have been using this interaction as a way to get their perfect rolls. They basically waste part making useless weapons and reinforce them until they get the perfect rolls, quit the game without saving, come back, and now they know when to actually craft the weapon that they want. But in my opinion, if a system inside a game is making the player try to find workarounds instead of naturally interacting with said system, then it is probably a bad system. What is even more vexing is that we had seen something like this before in Iceborn, but there's a key difference. The Safi-Jiva weapon awakening system was pretty similar to the Artian reinforcements, but they had what is known as a pity system. Pity systems come in different forms, but as the word implies, they are basically a way to give you a consolation prize for having grinded your ass so much. So even if you have godforsakenly bad luck, you will get what you want eventually. Same goes with the awakening system. The first rolls are all over the place, but as you give more and more awakening levels to the weapon, they start offering you more desirable things to the point that you can more or less control what you end up with. The important thing about this, however, is the simple fact that you as a player can see a light at the end of the tunnel, and that is enough to keep you going. So then what was the point of removing the PT system? Capcom had already tried using multivariate system with the Safijiva weapons, and even then it was a bit concerning, but at least not entirely hostile towards the player, so it kinda worked out in the end. But Artian Weapons? What the fuck, man? It makes me particularly angry because the presence of Artian Weapons means that time and resources were destined to a system that feels like a very poor excuse of an endgame. And as such, people are not interacting with your system, Capcom. If anything, they are doing all they can to circumvent it. The fact that there's people justifying modding the reinforcements because, quote-unquote, they don't have the time to grind so much, in a game that is all about the grinding loop, is crazy to me. This is what happens when you make these convoluted systems. You make the players want to avoid them as much as possible. And in the case of Monster Hunter, that is to the detriment of the core experience. It really doesn't help your case that you decided to go on and release Wilds early this year, even though it was unfinished. Because you thought that you could give players something to do on the meantime with this system, and guess what? It is not working. You either intentionally tried to artificially increase the playtime with this system, or you simply tried replicating the Awakening system without learning why it works in the first place. And none of those scenarios make you look very good. I hope that by now, you, the viewer, can more or less get an idea of why these weapons are an unfortunate misstep. But let's think about things from Capcom's perspective. Capcom is a company. They want to make as much money as they can with their games. Monster Hunter as a franchise has always had a very steady formula for the player's progression. And, correct me if I'm wrong, it has only started to dabble with multivariate systems since Iceborn. So before that, I can see Capcom looking at their surroundings and thinking, damn, a lot of games are using these progression systems that can do a lot of things to conceal lazy design. They can artificially prolong game time, they can keep engagement going, it's really good for metrics and game longevity. Not only that, but a lot of these games are also live service games, which really extend the amount of player retention that you can get by making seasonal content. Can I really keep making Monster Hunter titles as a one-time plaything and make the franchise survive when the competition is doing all these other things? See, this is where I have to cut Capcom some slack. There are many design choices that game developers pursue in the current ecosystem of the video game industry simply to increase profit or to please investors. It is becoming less and less common to see games that can compete with these business models and thrive by delivering a finished product. Because the way that these things go is, you get a lot of hype, money and attention during the release, and then you slowly fade to obscurity as new games come into the market. I'm not even mad at the fact that we had a rather lackluster endgame. I don't even have a problem with a lot of the things that people complain about because, as I said, they can be worked out eventually. I understand that in order to compete with so many malpractices that are going around in the industry, Capcom might feel very tempted to incorporate them into their models. But this is where we, as a community, have to push back. Like my guy Meatman said in his last video.
And as long as they keep that train up, they're going to have me invested, and they're going to have a lot of people invested. And I'm going to keep, a little bit of hope and goodwill in their pocket. But it's really easy for, even if it's not the devs' faults, like even if Tokuda is not making the choice, even if Ryozo doesn't make the choice and it's someone above him at Capcom, true.
His actual daddy.
Yeah, his actual dad. We can see things go south really quickly if they feel like they can pull one over on us consumers. And that's the way so many game companies have went. And Capcom has been leaning closer and closer in this direction, and they've been flirting with it. Please, Capcom, don't go through with it. And guys, if they do, it's our responsibility to help put them down. So, that's the main thing. Let's be hopeful, but let's also be realistic. We don't have to be overly negative, but let's just keep looking at history and hope it doesn't repeat itself and hope that they learn from it.
Capcom, I really doubt you're watching this, but this is what I have to say to you. You don't need these systems to deliver a successful game. as what happened with games like Baldur's Gate 3, Space Marine 2 or Elden Ring. You can simply focus on delivering a satisfying experience like you've always have. This is the reason why you've gained so much momentum in these past years. It's because you focus on making good games. Wilds might have a lot of shortcomings, but it remains a good game, and in the end, that's all that matters to us. And it's all we ask of you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know what you think about this topic in the comments, especially if this video gave you a new perspective. Don't forget to do any of the things shown in the stickers, you know, sharing, liking and such. I would really appreciate it. As always, my name is Sun, and until next time.